Welcome to No Holding Back with me, Susan Estrich, the podcast where I bring you the biggest names from the worlds of media, politics, and law. And boy, do I have a big one today. We dive into unfiltered, unapologetic, and insightful conversations. I speak my mind and I encourage my guests to do the same. No topic is off limits as we dive into the issues that shape our world. And what a week it's been in our world. Donald Trump has been sworn in. We've had his first week as president, and I can think of no one I'd rather talk to about it than my friend Joe Walsh. Joe is just a big deal. He's a former U.S. congressman, a longtime conservative commentator, somebody who tells it like it is, especially when it's meant challenging his own party. Many of you might know Joe from his days on Capitol Hill, representing Illinois' 8th Congressional District. After leaving office, he became a radio host and eventually launched a hit podcast, The Social Contract, which you have to listen to, where he digs deep into the political issues of the day with guests from all ends of the spectrum. It really is a must listen. Please go and check it out. Joe, it is wonderful to see you again. Happy 2025. Joe, what are we going to do? What's going on? Tell me what you think.
First off, Susan, I love you. It's so awesome to be with you again. Look, wake the fuck up, America. We unlike in 2016, Susan, we knowingly elected a bad person. Like, we knew he was bad. We knew he was a pathological liar. We knew he was an asshole. We knew he wanted to be a dictator. So we got nobody to blame but ourselves for what he's begun to do this week. But you and I come to each other 1 week in to a king in the White House. He's trying to act like a king. We're not supposed to have kings in America.
How did this happen, Joe? I mean, what's your explanation? You and I haven't talked in a little while. What's your explanation for how it is you and I didn't elect this guy? We've been warning people about him forever. What happened in the election, do you think?
Um, your the American people had a choice. Working class, regular people had a choice. Forget about the wealthy and the elites on both sides. Working class, regular Americans had to choose between an asshole, a guy who lies to them and demagogues everything they care about, or a party that they don't believe is in touch with them, that they believe dismisses them. So America, working class people, Susan, chose the demagogue over what they told me was the elitist party that looked down on them.
You know,
I heard
Kamala
that
Harris,
over and over.
but why? What happened to the Democratic Party that it became the party of the elitists that looked down on the people it was supposed to represent? I mean, the leadership of the Democratic Party thinks it's the party of the working class, and it isn't. What happened?
And you know, because you worked this so hard back in the day, it used to be. I'll give you one example, Susan. Immigration and the border, people coming
Yeah.
into the country illegally. Polls for years have shown that Latinos who are in this country legally, they oppose people coming in
Yeah.
illegally way more than the average American. But white progressives tend not to have a problem with an open border. So there's this disconnect between good, well-meaning white progressives who are out of touch on that issue with where regular white, black, and brown people are.
But what about this business now of, an executive order that rewrites the Constitution? I mean, I taught constitutional law for decades. You don't do it this way. I mean, this is just unbelievable what he's doing.
Well, you're way more knowledgeable than I am. I've always had a concern with like the imperial presidency, that we've had presidents ruling via executive order over the years. It's not at all what our founders envisioned. But like with everything else, Susan, Trump's taken it to the worst, ugliest place. It's like every issue, because you've been around politicians your whole life. Politicians lie, they fudge, they hedge. Donald Trump lies every time he breathes, every time he opens his mouth. And same thing here with these executive orders. So Trump's going to literally, and he told us this, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. He told us he was going to do it, and he's doing it, Susan. He's doing it.
He is doing it, Joe. And what are we supposed to do about it?
That's where I
What
need.
does an average American do? I mean, you're watching this. You're obviously in court. You've got a Reagan appointee as a judge in Seattle. Donald Trump has already put him down, said something about, well, you went to that judge in Seattle. The judge is a
Yeah.
Reagan appointee, for God's sakes, who says he's never seen anything like this in 40 years on the bench. What are we supposed to do?
Well, so the
Tear our
hope,
hair up?
yeah, Susan, one of the big hopes is that the law restrains him, that courts restrain him. A bunch of his executive orders this week have already been taken to court, and hopefully
Yeah.
the courts will declare what he's doing unconstitutional. Um, the average American, though, because remember, Susan, every single one of my former Republican colleagues in the House and the Senate, they're on their fucking knees. They
What
have
are they
told the
doing?
American people, yeah, they're going to do whatever Trump tells them. So we're going to get no help from the legislative branch. By the way, that means politically, we need to do all we can to make sure the Democrats take back the House in 26.
I can't believe you're saying that, Joe. I
I
mean,
know,
I
me.
know. I mean, this is my line, right? I mean,
Tea
do you
Party
really
Joe
want the
Walsh.
Democrats to take back what is wrong with your Republican colleagues? Why don't they stand up and say, we believe in the Constitution too? What are they so afraid of? Elon Musk?
Well, yeah, now he's an even bigger complicating factor. But Susan, from the beginning, like 6 years ago, when I publicly came out against Trump, that first year or two, I would have hundreds of my former colleagues call me privately and say, Joe, I agree with what you're saying about Trump.
Yeah.
He's a bad guy, boom, 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 but I can't say it publicly. I don't get those calls anymore because, look, they've now bought in. They've really bought into him. He now owns the party. So if you don't get down on your knees, you have no future in that party. And Susan, they don't want to lose that.
What does that mean you have no future? What kind of future do you have in the Republican Party right now? It's a future in which you get rid of the Constitution and shred it and put Pete Hegseth in as defense secretary? I mean, what do you think of that guy, Joe?
He's a punk. He's a drunk. He's a punk. He's utterly unfit to run the Department of Defense. But again, that doesn't matter. I mean, Trump's
How can
commander in
that not
chief.
matter? I mean,
Well,
you and I are sitting here.
I'm sorry. You're right, Susan. It doesn't matter to Republicans. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, these guys privately can't stand Trump, but they looked at what happened in November and they said, fuck it. He won. Now there's no running away from him. John Thune and the others, Susan, the sensible ones, after Trump won in November, they basically shrugged their shoulders and said, MAGA is the party. Period.
It is the party.
It is.
What
It is
happens
the
to
party.
regular? You talk to regular Republicans all the time. My father was a Republican. He was a Massachusetts Republican, which is probably a Democrat in any other state. But there are lots of well-meaning Republicans out there. What are they doing with a Pete Hegseth as their defense secretary? I mean, John Thune has got to know better, doesn't he?
No. Well, actually,
No.
Susan, no, Susan, that's an interesting question. Does John Thune know better? My answer is maybe, but he's made the calculation that Trump is the leader of the parties now, so do not defy him. Um, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, they knew by coming out against Hegseth, they knew there wasn't a third Republican or a fourth Republican. So that was a pretty safe thing for them to do because Hegseth will be nominated. But my God, Susan, Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Russian, she's a Putin puppet in charge of our intelligence. I actually think she might be in trouble.
Do you think so? You think they'll stand
Yes,
up to her?
I
Who?
think I think, and you know this, because these senators care so much about the nation's security and intel and all that. She may get the Matt Gaetz punch. She may actually have to be pulled. I think if there's one more that won't have the votes, it's only her. Kash Patel, by the way, is every bit as dangerous. Susan, here's the deal.
Patel is very dangerous. Tell people, Joe, just give them a little explanation of why he's so dangerous, because you and I both know that, and this is a very scary appointment.
Kash Patel, who Trump picked to be the head of the FBI, believes in his head and his heart that our FBI is the enemy. He believes our FBI is the enemy. So just work off of that. He still believes the FBI was behind January 6th. And this is the man Trump wants. No, he believes this.
How do you know that?
He's said it. There's testimony that Susan, in a normal, rigorous hearing, would come out. By the way, I don't think the Democrats have done very well in these hearings yet.
No.
I hope they fucking get some backbone and go. I mean, Pam Bondi to be the attorney general. Susan, Pam Bondi was asked, did Donald Trump lose? Did Joe Biden win in 2020? She refused to answer that. And then Democrats just like moved on to the next subject. Hello, I wouldn't have moved on from that. Democrats got to get tougher in these hearings.
Why aren't they tougher? I think they've been giving these guys, a ride. I mean, why didn't they put up more of an opposition to Hegseth? Why are they letting Patel get through? What are they doing? Who's leading the Democratic Party?
Susan, if I were with you right now, I would kiss you on your forehead and give you a big hug, because that's the question. Nobody is. So all these Democrats, Susan, who like me during the campaign said Trump's an existential threat to our democracy. He's a fascist. Right. He's a dictator. Joe Biden said as much. So then Trump wins and Joe Biden invites him to the White House for tea. Donald Trump, the dictator, wins and Joe Biden shares a limo ride with him. I don't blame the average voter out there for thinking, oh, did Biden and Obama and Kamala Harris really mean what they said? You know what? Like all these Democrats, you said this guy is a threat to our democracy. I believe he is. But then he wins and now you're trying to curry favor with him?
Be gracious, I guess they would say. Should they have been gracious?
No. You and I, Susan, we all accepted the result of the election. Unlike Trump and unlike
Trump,
Biden.
We're not deniers.
We are not deniers. The American people spoke. Donald Trump won fair and square. But you do not accept who he is. And if you truly believe he's a threat to our democracy, you accept the result of the election, but you do not participate in anything with him. There needs to be an opposition party. This man, Susan, is trying to destroy our institutions.
He is. And
there needs to be an opposition party.
So who's going to lead it, Joe? I mean, you want me to vote for you for DNC chair? I would love to. I don't even know who these people are who are running. I don't know what the DNC chair is. I don't know what Chuck Schumer is doing. I don't know what Hakeem Jeffries is doing. So far as I can tell, nobody's doing anything except the ACLU, which is bringing lawsuits.
Yeah, it ain't Chuck Schumer. Susan, here's the deal. You know this, I know this, and I'm a populist. We're living in a populist moment. People are pissed off. Whatever you say about Trump, and he's an evil populist, he's a bullshitter, but he's a populist. He plays to this. The Democrats have been missing in action. I need a fighter. I need a populist. I need a guy or a gal who's going to throw punches. I need a guy or a gal to say that's not who we are. Who he is, that's not who we are. I don't know who that Democrat is. It's not going to be Chuck Schumer. It's not going to be Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe it's one of these Democratic governors. I don't know.
Who do you see? Is there anybody you like? Is there anybody I should watch? Is there, are we you're holding your head? That's not a good sign.
Susan, I'm a lousy guest. I wish I had. Boom, I've got an answer for you. But that's
You're a
the
great
problem.
guest, Joe. The problem is we got a lousy problem.
I don't have an answer. Susan, think about this. Yesterday, just yesterday, in Newark, New Jersey, there was an ICE targeted raid. Our
Right,
immigration cops went into Newark to go after people who are in this country illegally of criminal records. You know what they did, though? They apprehended a few people who shouldn't have been apprehended. They
right,
apprehended a U.S. military veteran.
right.
Now, Democrats, put a fucking name and a face to what happened yesterday. Show me who that military veteran is.
Exactly.
Get out there and scream about it. None of them have.
No, I read that in the paper this morning and I thought to myself, how can this be? We're going into a city, we're raiding people. These people, some of them are bad people who shouldn't be here, but some of them are obviously people who've got children in this country, who've got
Yes.
families, who are military veterans. What the hell is going on?
And see
And
the
nobody
problem,
was raising hell.
yeah, the problem, Susan, is like we've been conducting these raids for years. They happened under Biden, they happened under Biden. Biden and Obama didn't put a big camera on it. Trump is putting a camera on these raids because he wants to scare the fuck out of migrants, which is deplorable. But Trump also wants Americans to think, oh, I'm doing something unprecedented, which is bullshit. They've always been happening. But Democrats, you got nothing to say? Come on. Susan, maybe John Fetterman. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I need a
John
working
Fetterman is
class
making
fighter.
nice to Trump, isn't he?
And and thank you, Susan. Again, I would give you a big hug. If I'm John Fetterman, I don't go down to Mar-a-Lago. I don't
Why?
know
Why did he
why don't.
go, Joe?
Well, he said, because I'm senator of all Pennsylvanians, Republican and independent too, and I represent them all, and I want to fix things for them all. So I got to work with this president. I disagree with that, but I respect that. But but no, um, you have to be an opposition party. This is not normal, Susan. This is not like we elected Reagan or we elected George
No.
H.W. Bush, a Republican who's a conservative and you don't like him on certain issues. We elected a pathological liar, an unlawful, a lawless, un American psychopath. They all know that. So you need to speak to that.
And how do you speak to that? I mean, if you don't speak to that in the confirmation hearings, you speak to that in your podcast all the time.
I
But what
speak
do
to
you
that,
tell your
Susan.
podcast listeners to do? I know there's a sense of powerlessness right now and
Oh,
hopelessness that people just don't know what they're supposed to do. You've got people saying, I just won't listen to the news anymore. Well, that'll be really helpful. Then it'll all happen and you won't know about it. What are you supposed
Susan,
to do?
Susan, that's such a great question. And I know you've heard from people like I have for the past 2.5 months who just want to check out. They're
They
done.
just want to check out.
Yeah.
They just want to
So,
check out, which is the worst thing to do.
so I think the most helpful thing to do is just start. We don't know what to do. We need to resist who and what he is. I've started this thing called No Kings. Like, let's all just rally around one basic truth. We don't have kings in America. I've changed my profile pics. Every time I go on TV, I say that we don't have kings in America. I think if we could all kind of rally around a basic truth like that, that most Americans still should believe in, I think we'll figure out how to resist. Susan, if he uses the military to go into the streets to deport people, man, we all got to fucking rise up and go in the streets and get arrested as well. These are the things we're going to need to do.
Will you get arrested along with the illegal immigrants? Do you think people will get in the streets?
Yes. Susan, and you know, again, I don't think the average American knows. Barack Obama, in each of his terms, deported way more people than Trump did.
Then Trump
Joe
did.
Biden, Joe Biden in one term deported as many people as Trump did in the first term. The difference is they didn't brag about it. And Obama, to his credit, went after people who were here illegally who had violent criminal records. I think what Trump's going to do is do what every president should do. You got a violent criminal record and you're in this country illegally, get the hell out of here.
Right,
Right?
of course.
Right. Susan, if Trump goes beyond that, and I don't think he will. This is all performative bullshit. It's all performative with Trump. He wants Americans to think he's doing something new. But if he does go after the 11 to 12 to 13 million people who are non-citizens, who've been here for years and lived good lives and paid taxes and contributed to the communities, if he starts to do things like that, he'll fuck up the economy. And yes, you, me, and everybody will take to the streets. But I don't think he'll do that.
So what's he going to do? Just have these show raids? I mean, in California where I live, the migrants pick all the fruits and vegetables, and agribusiness would shut down without migrant workers. I mean, where are those people?
I think maybe you disagree with me. I think Trump's an idiot, just a fucking idiot. But I think people around him are smart. And I know his economic advisors have told him, sir, you can't go after these workers in California. You can't do mass deportation because it will devastate the economy. So I think generally this is all just performative to fool Americans into thinking I'm
We're
tough
doing
on the
something.
border.
I'm tough.
Yes. And by the
It's
way,
scary
Susan,
stuff.
yeah, by the way, Susan, again, love the Democrats, love the party, but they've been bad on this issue. And so they need to kind of get right on this issue.
How did they get right, Joe?
Oh my God. You know why I love being with you? Because you ask wonderful questions. I don't know, Susan. The energy in the Republican Party is MAGA. The
Right.
energy in the energy in the Democratic Party is the good folks on the progressive far left. And they've never recognized the border as a problem. They've never recognized all these migrants in cities throughout the country. They're all good people, but that's creating a problem. The far left doesn't think that's a problem. So the Democratic Party, Susan, on immigration and crime needs to move to the fucking middle.
I agree.
They don't.
I've been fighting the Democratic Party on crime for 40 years now. I
Amen.
used to get accused of being a racist because I would point out that the victims of crime look a hell of a lot like the perpetrators of crime. And if you
Bingo.
care about minorities in America, you ought to care about the victims of crime. But I've been alone on that, and we've seen Democrats, God, my own candidate, lose elections over that. So I couldn't agree with you more. What about these other DEI issues? I mean, there's some scary stuff going on right now about people being told to inform on anyone who's engaged in DEI work. I mean, I think some of the DEI stuff went too far, but this is craziness right now.
Well, and that's a great point, Susan. So let's always remember that on all these issues, DEI, race, gender, woke, all this stuff, the left kind of did go too far. Trump is an ugly, ugly reaction to that.
Right.
Um, uh, Look, it's scary because Trump is sending people home in almost every federal agency right now. The top civil servants are being told they have to take a loyalty test before
Yeah.
they can come back to work. A loyalty test. We don't have kings in America, but this is going on in department after department right now. And nobody's talking about that, right? Everybody's talking about birthright citizenship, which is clearly unconstitutional. But Susan, if Donald Trump has a strategy, it's always been, I'm going to throw 1,000 pieces of dog shit against the wall, and you're not going to be able to follow all of it. And this one is under the radar right now. He's demanding loyalty tests before civil servants can go back to work.
How do you get attention on that? Because I'm watching as they're shutting down department after department. They shut down the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. They shut down the CDC. They're shutting down health advisories. They're saying that, we shouldn't be giving any health advisories to people. I mean, what's going to happen when bird flu jumps to human beings? Are we not going to tell anybody?
Yeah, think about that, Susan. So he's ordered all of our federal health agencies not to put out any external communication
Right.
until a White House political appointee has approved it. So what do we do? Well, a lot of this, the loyalty stuff shit is being taken to court. But Susan, the rest of us, like this is going on. Trump did that this week, but we're so caught up in all the outrageous, outlandish shit he says to distract us from the important stuff. So I hope that a lesson we've learned this time around is focus on the important shit, not the stupid shit he says. I
So
hope.
how do we do that, Joe? I'm going to school with you, okay? What are you doing? How do you do it? How do you make the social contract work again?
So I use every single public platform I have, my podcast, my TV, my radio, everything I do. This is all I emphasize. And I emphasize the whole notion, Susan, of the social contract. What the hell is that? That's just everything we're supposed to do as free citizens in this country. And one of the big things we've always been supposed to do, or our democracy will end, is we've got to stay fucking informed. We have to stay informed. We're not doing that right now. And we're too easily led astray by bullshit, disinformation, misinformation, and lies. So somehow, what do we do, Susan? We need a lot more voices like me out there doing this, telling people to stay informed, showing them how they can stay informed. Donald Trump is an authoritarian, Susan. They live for people feeling hopeless and for people not being informed. That's how authoritarians thrive.
So you stay informed. I mean, I really think there is a danger out there that the legitimate media, the old media, the legacy media, whatever you call it, has lost all credibility. They've settled with Donald Trump. You've got Jeff Bezos and the rest of them sitting there, do, I don't know, sucking up to Trump. I don't know what else you call it. And where are the independent voices? On the podcast, we've got you, Joe, and we've got a few others, but they dominate the podcasts. They dominate the alternative media. They dominate social media. And we've somehow lost this battle. I don't know how we get it back.
Susan, Democrats have been so slow to this dance. When you and I would go on CNN and MSNBC like 20 years ago,
Yeah,
that was the place. It's
right.
no longer the place.
No,
I go on CNN like I did last night. Maybe there are 150, 200,000 people watching, whereas 10, 15 years ago, there were a couple million. So
right,
people now go elsewhere to get informed. Republicans and MAGA have done a great job of that. They have a huge network of independent podcasters who feed their people a lot of
right.
bullshit, but that's where people go. But Democrats haven't tapped into that world yet.
And how do we get more Democrats to do that, Joe?
We need popular Democratic center left voices to go independent. We need Joe Rogan's on our side.
Right.
There are none.
There
We
are
need
none. Why not? Why is Joe Rogan so popular and more popular than Joe Walsh?
well because part of it is
I'm
Joe.
promoting you. I'll promote you till the day is done.
No, part of it is Joe Rogan feeds bullshit
And it
every time he
works.
talks.
And it
So
works.
and it works. And you and I and Democrats and people like us should never do that.
Right.
But
We
my
can't outdo
God,
them at that, and we'll just cheapen ourselves if we try.
no, but get out of our fucking ivory towers and fucking do a fucking podcast in a t-shirt and talk to regular people about regular things, but give them the truth. Democrats don't do that. It's all like this MSNBC crowd, all these Manhattan progressive elites.
talking to
My
each
God,
other.
enough.
Enough already.
Enough. Joy Reid, I love Lawrence O'Donnell. All these folks, good people. But that can't be the center of your universe, Democrats. You're losing. You're
Right.
losing. Get out there in the country.
Who do you see doing that? Who am I supposed to watch? Who am I supposed to emulate? Because, you know, last Sunday I picked up the paper and there's this endless story about Chuck Schumer and how he put together the effort to get rid of Joe Biden. I read this thing. I thought, what is this all about? Who cares? This is old news. This is not what we need. And
And
yet that's Democratic leadership.
you probably read that in the New York Times or the Washington Post, right?
Yep.
Or the
Yep.
LA Times. Yeah, where maybe 3 or 4% of the country goes for their news. Again, no knock on them, but regular folks aren't reading the New York Times. I think of this, Susan. So look what CNN just did this week, and I went fucking ballistic publicly on this in the media. They're demoting Jim Acosta, who's a tough, independent, unafraid voice, who can be tough on Trump. But because of that, because Trump complained about Jim Acosta, CNN is demoting that tough, independent voice and going to put another boring person in Acosta's slot. Well, that's bullshit. CNN shouldn't be just because we have a fucking crybaby in the White House. CNN's going to get rid of Jim Acosta. That's wrong. But if I'm Jim Acosta, screw CNN. Start my own independent platform. Get out there and do a daily podcast and speak truth, baby, every day. We need people like that to do it.
Is he going to do it? What's he going to do? Is he going to take the demotion and just,
I don't think he'll last at CNN. I'm going to talk to him this weekend. I'm going to encourage him to do this. We need more Democratic voices, and I'm not. I'm still Tea Party Joe Walsh, but we need Democratic voices to tear off their fucking MSNBC and N shirts and get out there and do your own thing. That's what the other side learned a few years ago.
they learned it a few years ago and they've been doing it ever since. And they've been doing it incredibly well. And they're using issues. Let me get you on another issue. What do we do about this transgender issue that's just getting whipsawed on us?
Don't be fucking unafraid, Susan. And look, I used to be a right wing culture warrior. I used to say shit I'm embarrassed of. But the right wing, I used to do it. They play this culture war shit great, and
They played it
Democrats are
great.
yeah, and Democrats are afraid to fight on it. So
Right.
transgender Americans, the right screams about bathrooms and men and women's sports. Oh, and those are issues Americans care about. Where are most Americans on the transgender issue? Love them, embrace them, let them live their lives, let them identify as they want to identify. We embrace them. We embrace all God's children. When it comes to sports, let's make sure we find solutions that are fair. When it comes to bathrooms and locker rooms, let's respect the privacy of both. Find common sense solutions. Susan, that's where most Americans are on the transgender issue
Why are the Democrats getting whipsawed on that?
because the Democrats have listened to their far left on this issue and they haven't even given in on the sports and bathroom and locker room issues, where most Americans say, come on, this isn't fair, right? You can identify as a transgender woman, but if you're still built like a man, you shouldn't be competing with them. The far left, Susan, co-opted this issue. And so Democrats have been afraid to even talk about the issue. So they're getting beaten up by it.
They're getting beaten
Completely.
up terribly. I mean, the most effective ad that Trump ran was that ad at the end when they said, Donald Trump stands for you and Kamala stands for them. And people got it right away and said, this is
Susan,
not our
you
side.
you were so good and great and effective in that campaign world you were in. You're right. That was a brilliant ad. And what did the Democrats do to respond?
Nothing.
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 Instead of, if
They
I'm
missed
Kamala
it
Harris,
completely. That was the Willie Horton ad that they missed completely.
that was Susan the Willie Horton ad. When the truth is, my God, MAGA on transgenders, MAGA believes it's a mental illness. MAGA doesn't even believe it's real. Hey, Democrats, go after that. Most
Yeah.
Americans don't believe that. But Kamala Harris kept her mouth shut. Joe Biden's too fucking old.
Joe Biden stayed in this race so long. I mean, this is the frustrating part. Kamala probably shouldn't have been the nominee. If she was going to be the nominee, she should have had to win primaries to do it. And Joe Biden just stayed in the race way too long. He was surrounded by people who had a false sense of loyalty. And, I understand that. When you're young, especially, you believe that loyalty is all that matters. And sometimes you have to be loyal to something greater. And I think the people around Biden who I know were loyal to a fault. And that was a terrible, terrible mistake.
Hey, Susan, Joe Biden gave us Donald Trump again.
Yeah,
I don't blame Kamala Harris at all. In
neither do I.
100 days, she ran a damn good campaign. A damn good campaign. I was out there campaigning with her every day. She ran a damn good campaign. Biden, because of his ego, stuck around too long. By the way, Susan, Donald Trump is a unique threat. It doesn't help when Joe Biden does stuff like preemptively pardon his whole family. When he does
Mm.
shit like that, it helps Trump.
Of course, I mean, his pardons made Trump's pardons look acceptable, and Trump's
Amen.
pardons were utterly unacceptable. The
Utterly
notion that he
unacceptable.
could pardon people who beat up police officers, I mean, where does that come from? And he got away with it.
He got away with it. Susan, the man tried to overthrow an American election 4 years ago, and the American people don't care, and he became president again. So, I mean, we're living in la la land right now, but still, that doesn't mean we don't fight. That doesn't mean we don't fight.
And where are the Republican leaders? I know I'm taking your time, but where are the Republican leaders? Is there any leadership? You're laughing at me now. You're smiling. You look good when you smile, but is there
I
any leadership on the Republican side? Is there
so
anybody we can look to?
that's so funny, Susan, because my wife says I don't smile enough. I'm too mean looking. I'm smiling with you because I adore you. So, no, there's no Republican leadership. Look, Joe Walsh, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, well, we're no longer Republicans. So when
Right.
you speak up in the public square as a Republican, you're done. So there is none. And that party, my party's not going to change. Um, and by the way, Susan,
Will it change in 4 years, Joe? Is there
no,
any hope for it?
no. And by the way, I want to say, hey, Nikki Haley, no. Hey, Paul Ryan, no. These Republicans like Nikki Haley and Paul Ryan who think that you can kind of straddle both sides of it. No, Nikki Haley will never get elected as nominated as a Republican. This is a MAGA party. Whoever the nominee is in 28 will be full on MAGA. And I don't want people listening to us, Susan, to roll their eyes at me. But we've always had a failure of imagination with Trump. Are you telling me he might not try to run for a third term? I don't think it's crazy to put that out there. A Republican member of Congress introduced a bill yesterday to change the
Oh,
Constitution
God.
to let him run for a third term. That bill was introduced by a Tennessee Republican yesterday. So don't tell me that's crazy. But if not Trump, Donald Jr., JD Vance, it'll be a MAGA. This
JD
is a
Vance
MAGA
is
party.
JD Vance scares me as much as Trump because I don't believe Trump even believes half the bullshit he does. And I
He
think
doesn't.
JD Vance does believe it.
And I think you're spot on in that analysis. You're spot on, which is why he's scarier and JD Vance is smart.
He's
But
smart.
but
So
no,
what
hey
do you do?
Susan, it's no longer a free market, limited government, rule of law party. It's a nationalistic, build a wall around America, fuck brown and black people kind of party. That's not changing. Not in our lifetime, Susan. Not in our lifetime.
That is really depressing, Joe. Tell me
So,
something upbeat. I'm running out of time with you, and I
well,
love talking to you. Tell me something upbeat to keep me going and help me get through
I
the
love
next
you.
weeks.
I love you too much to lie to you. So I don't know that I have anything upbeat, but I'll say this. The only hope we have is that the American people rise up. And the only hope we have is that the Democratic Party gets their act together in the near term, because there ain't no third party coming. That's out the door. That's out the window now. It's either the Republicans or the Democrats. We have to do all we can to kick the Democrats in the ass to do the right thing. And I think, Susan, there are Democrats recognizing what they have to do. That gives me some hope.
That gives me some hope too, Joe. I just want to have you on again and again. I love talking to you. We have to find a candidate. We have to find some spokespeople. We have to get you on, I don't know, more national podcasts. We have to get you out there speaking to people and giving them hope.
Well, but part of the problem, Susan, is I am politically homeless. I mean, I could declare on Monday I'm a Democrat. I'm going to be a conservative Democrat, and then I'd have a team and a home. But Susan, be real. I don't think the Democratic Party would embrace a Joe Walsh or an Adam Kinzinger
No,
right now. They wouldn't.
no. No, they're still worried about the woke left. And
Thank
that's
you.
the problem. And the woke left is losing us elections, and it's not helping us.
But what? Okay, so last thing, this should give you and I hope. Trump will overreach. He's already
We will,
overreaching. And so that will help Democrats, I believe, take back the House in 26, which is the first step.
which is the first step. Joe,
I
you are
love
the
you,
best.
Susan Estrich. Love you.
I love you, Joe Walsh. Everybody should listen to your podcast. How did they get your podcast? Tell us.
It's called The Social Contract with Joe Walsh. You can find it everywhere. Follow me on Twitter at Walsh Freedom. I'm Walsh Freedom everywhere, and I am a big fan of yours. It's so good to talk to you.
It's so wonderful to talk to you. You've been listening to No Holding Back with me, Susan Estrich. I want to take this moment to thank Joe again for always having a candid and thought-provoking conversation. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch every episode over on our YouTube channel. Please leave a rating and review on your chosen platform. This is how we conduct warfare in this day and age, right, Joe? And
Yes.
keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on No Holding Back.